This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and this is another episode of WCM's Park Update, sponsored by New Book Reservation Systems, and of course my colleague Mike Gast, the former Vice President of Communications at Campgrounds of America, is here. And then our guest today is Charlie Boyne, which, Charlie, I think I met you, well, mainly through LinkedIn, because I think we follow each other on LinkedIn. And your business is, you co-founded what is called the Glamp Coach, and I know you post quite often on LinkedIn, or you're pretty active at least on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to kind of bring you on just maybe to talk a little bit about the glamping industry and how you got into it. Were you at the recent glamping show in Colorado?
Absolutely. I'm not going to miss one of those.
All right.
I'm sure we both walked by you 15 times.
Yeah,
sure.
We must have walked by you.
I know, it does need to be longer. We need a full week to actually get to say hi to everybody. Yeah.
So I guess, what was your favorite part about being at the show, I guess?
I'd say this year it was great. Last year I built an exhibitor space. I had a covered deck. And that was a lot of stress, and I was sort of stuck there, and I didn't get to go explore the show as much as this year. I was just out there with a clipboard. So it was fun to get to see all the units and go to some of the lectures. We had some great speakers, and more time to talk to the people that I was eager to get to finally meet in the flesh instead of just LinkedIn.
So you mentioned when we were visiting right before we went live that part of the challenge of I guess the attraction and the challenge of the glamping business is there's such a low point of entry right now. Just about anybody that either has land or the financial resources and the time can jump into it, switch careers easily. It's something that a couple of people can get started with. I'm sure it kind of feels to me like it must have been in the camping business back in the late 60s and early 70s when everybody was just getting going from scratch. Does that make your job more appealing, or is it a little bit harder to sell because people think they can do it themselves?
I think it definitely makes it a little bit harder, not only in terms of execution, but also sometimes emotionally. I find myself often talking people out of building glamping businesses because I think that a lot of people see this industry and they say, "Oh, cool! I can just buy a cheap shelter thing and throw it up in my backyard, and boom, passive income." And it takes a lot to help people who have never been in hospitality to understand that hospitality is absolutely not passive. And then it's also, there's a lot of room for education in the space when it comes to helping people understand that if you want these units to last, and if you want to be hitting those high number ADRs and those long lasting luxury, getting those longer bookings, and what that does to your bottom line, so aside from the hospitality end, also the construction end, and understanding what goes into the actual requirements for their investments if you want to be getting those bookings that I think we all see on social media and make us want to get into this. It's those who are most successful are not just pitching a tent and calling it a day.
Yeah. I mean, I think we hear a lot in, at the glamping show, and even in the traditional campground and RV park space, I think we hear a lot about the hospitality portion. It's not just putting up the tents or the cabins or the mirror houses, whatever you want to use. There's a ton of different things. But it's that hospitality part. Do you feel like people understand that when they're coming and looking to open up a business, I guess?
So I think that's, there's a low point of entry, but there's a huge spectrum of people who are entering. And so you do get people who have an experience with hospitality. You do get people who have an experience with construction, but maybe not the other part. So there's so many parts and pieces that go into curating the best experience possible for your guests. And so I think that there are a lot of people with with an understanding of certain parts and pieces, and just sort of helping them either get a wider scope on that understanding, or putting them in the right direction with some of the other amazing service providers in this space, and making sure that they're not going to pull the trigger on anything just because they understood one part really well.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel, well, I guess let's back up a little bit. Just give us some of a brief history of how you got to be the Glamp coach, I guess, how did you get into this business to begin with?
So I started out when COVID hit. I had just started a home renovation business, and I always wanted to build tiny houses. I always wanted to design and build tiny houses. And so I decided to go design and build the panelized tiny house prototype of my dreams. And realized I rented, I paid very little money for access to 90 acres in the middle of nowhere, Texas, Dale, Texas, if you've never heard of it. And found that I was able to rent out my prototype while it was under construction, as soon as it was, no rain on your head in there, as a glamping unit on the weekends. And so I was able to live in it 5 days a week in a beautiful meadow with my dog. And then I would go sleep in my tent a couple 100 yards away in the woods on Fridays and Saturdays. And it just sort of clicked for me. I said, wow, this industry offers, if you do it right, it offers the opportunity for high dollar, luxury level, short-term rental real estate revenue on rural land for minimum construction costs. And that's when I sort of haven't looked back since I realized all of that. And yeah, it's been a push since.
Yeah.
So at what point did you realize you had enough knowledge to really be of help to these people getting started? Because as you said, you didn't come into this with a huge glamping. Maybe you had the hospitality background, but nobody had any experience in glamping. So at what point do you say, hey, I can be a coach?
Honestly, when I realized that everyone needs, everyone says decks, but I like to separate it. It's foundations and floors. So they're two separate things, and you can have your indoor floors, outdoor floors. We call them decks. When I realized that so many people were falling short of their real potential guest experience by not building foundations and floors correctly. And so I realized that there was one really simple thing that was missing from this industry. And it was something that actually sort of created a canvas on which they could create much more extravagant experiences. Because it's when you start having those good foundations and floors are what allow you to start bringing in heavier systems like gas and electric and water and plumbing and sewage and the hot tubs and the outdoor kitchens and the day beds and the take it to the nth degree. And so I think it was my construction knowledge that I think sort of it put me in a good position to help people who were trying to avoid construction by just pitching a tent. Sort of being like, no, back it up. You need to, if you want this business to last, it's actually it's a very basic concept, but you need some good construction. And as time has gone on, I've talked to a lot of people who I think are just, there's so much enthusiasm in the industry, but I'm really good at overthinking. And so I think that I've been able to help people sort of or think ahead of some of those issues because I've gone through them. And then I was building decks for other businesses that have done everywhere from poorly to amazingly. And so I think my experience and my network have just shown me that when I talk to landowners at this point, I think that they eventually I realized that my sales pitch was a consultation in and of itself. Yeah. And sometimes it took months to explain it. But there's room for education. And
so when you got started, there was a tent. And there was a limited amount of cabins. And as we saw a couple of weeks ago at the show, now the options are unlimited. Does that make it harder to get going in this? You see people get distracted or going for the wrong thing a lot?
I think it's exciting to say I don't see a lot of the wrong thing out there. I don't think that there's many bad products. I think there's products that owners can get excited about and guests can get excited about. I think the big one for me is I see a sort of divide in developer mentality when it comes to unit types and the guest mentality when it comes to experiencing those unit types. I think owners care a lot about what their unit is. They care a lot. I sort of think about the drone's perspective, looking down on the property. I think an owner comes at it like, what am I going to be sprinkling my property with? Whereas I think guests care a lot more about, is it a cozy bed? You know, do I want to curl up in there, turn on that cute little stove and look out this big window and see the storm rolling across the valley? At that point, if I think about it from the guest experience, I don't really care if it's an A-frame or a dome or a yurt or a tent or a pod or whatever it is, as long as my experience inside of it is fantastic. And I think that I see a lot of owners getting very hung up on scrolling through this seemingly endless catalog of amazing products, and thinking about it from the drone's perspective instead of from that cozy indoor perspective.
I mean, there are times though, like depending on weather-based situations and stuff, where certain products do work better than other products, though, right?
100%.
Like, yeah, I mean, like canvas tents probably don't do very well in the snow. So in that kind of stuff, that goes into the process too when you're planning out parks, correct?
Absolutely. So the I don't mean to axe out the importance of shelter choice, but I think because it is extremely important. Knowing your snow loads, knowing what kind of climate you're against. You know, I had one client in Colorado, and we were talking about they're not near a major ski resort, and so we were sort of realizing that even though their unit's going to be in some pretty intense elements and some pretty cold winters and stuff, they weren't really planning on having high occupancy in those months. And they were saying that their peak months are going to be in the summer. And so knowing that, like, okay, well, you're in a rough climate, but if your peak months are summer months, then let's make sure that we're choosing a shelter that accommodates guests best in those summer months. Mm-hmm. And then if you're at a ski resort, then obviously, okay, you need to be cozy even in negative temperatures in a snowstorm. And so then at that point, it's more of a structural insulation, water tightness distinction between shelter types than. And
I'm going to get myself in trouble because I'm going to have places like Outstanding Tent and Bush Tech calling me now saying that their tents can last in the snow, which they can. So I meant like a little tiny canvas structure. So hopefully I don't get a ton of phone calls. So
no. I absolutely love both of those manufacturers doing some really fun stuff with Outstanding here. That's coming out soon.
So how much do you work with those manufacturers, Charlie? Do you stay up on what they've got coming up?
I'm obsessed. To be honest with you, I'm lucky that I have begun to find a way to sustain my obsession here in the form of Glamp Coach, because I was already obsessed with all this stuff, and I'm close with a number of manufacturers from the decks perspective, and I've got a number of manufacturers that they make amazing products and they're great at manufacturing them and distributing them. But then when they show up to site, they have a lot of clients saying, I need help with the deck. And that's not necessarily something that they do. And so a number of manufacturers and I have relationships where they then send people to me and I sort of take them from, okay, congratulations, the pallet's on your property. Now what? And so I think that we complement each other in a lot of ways. And I'm trying to build an in-depth understanding of the entire catalog that's out there because they almost all need decks.
So you mentioned that you've got that one unit that you built yourself out in the Texas hills. Is that where it stopped for you? Did you build more out there, or do you have any designs on having a little chain of glamping resorts of your own?
So one thing that I love to be able to say is that in my consultations and in my design process, I'm just trying to build myself up to a point where I get to buy some property and I get to walk around and I get to choose, this is where I want this shelter type and this is where I want that shelter type. So my dream is to absolutely be doing this. It was thrilling to get to do it in Texas. I loved walking that property with my partners and choosing which parts of it we wanted to highlight. There's an honor in land intervention. There's a duty to it that I love. But no, so I built that small. We had that cabin and I think 3 bell tents at that property. And after just a few months, I said, all right, I'm sold. This industry's everything. But I realized I could have bought the same tents, the same solar setups, the same kitchenettes, the same toilets. We could have bought all the same products and put it in a more climate friendly region and doubled our annual revenue, because we were only open 3 months in the fall and 3 months in the spring. And so I packed up everything. I sold my shares to my partners. I packed up everything and I moved to Baja California in Mexico. And I literally went around with print screens of Hip Camp saying, ¿Has escuchado de glamping? Which means, have you heard of glamping? And trying to convince landowners that they should build glamping businesses with my help. And so since then, I've built decks for a few businesses. I've had decks built. We just finished 4 decks for some F-domes in Tennessee. We've got some more going up. One client's talking about tree houses. And yeah, at this point, I realized I like this industry too much to focus on one property. I wanna play with everybody everywhere with all the different types. So
yeah, definitely. Well, we have to take a couple minutes to recognize our sponsor, New Book, and then we will be back to talk with Charlie Boyne after the break.
Calling all campground operators, owners, front desk heroes, say hello to your show sponsor, New Book, your connected hospitality management solution packed with the power to streamline your operations, maximize revenue, increase bookings, and deliver memorable guest experiences. Thanks to its suite of innovative and easy-to-use tools, backed by an expert customer support team cheering you on 24/7. So if you're ready to level up your campground and unlock more opportunities, head to newbook.cloud to start your journey today.
Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update, and we are chatting with Charlie Boyne, who's the founder of Glamp Coach. And I guess, Charlie, you talked a little bit about the resort, well, not the resort, but the unit you had and your land in Texas. And then you talked a little bit about some of the stuff you did in Baja right before the break. I guess, when you're talking to these, these people, giving them consultations, on the traditional campground and RV park side, places like Hip Camp and some of these pop-up properties have been a source of, I guess, angst, because the property owners all have went through zoning and permitting and all that kind of stuff, and they see some of these properties as, some of them just stick up structures and they don't get that zoning, they don't get that permitting. I guess, what's your viewpoint on that? I guess, do you encourage everyone you work with to go through those processes, or are you seeing a lot of people just sticking up cabins or yurts or whatever and not going through that process? I guess
I think there's a lot of people doing it. Ultimately, to me, if you're going for that sort of bottom of the barrel ADR minimum construction investment, I should say, yeah, sure, go for it. The tents aren't too expensive, and if you're just going to throw it up in your backyard, you might get shut down in a couple months, but if you can make money back then, go for it. But I don't have enough faith in the longevity of those businesses to consider them an actual existential threat to people who are doing it right. So if you're getting the permits, if you're getting the county on board, if you're making sure that your neighbors are that you're in harmony with your neighborhood, don't worry about the people who are just slapping up a tent. You can let them scrape the bottom of the barrel and get put out of business soon enough, because this is you need to build a business ready to last.
Do you think places like Hip Camp, do enough to or like even like Harvest Host, do you think they do enough to ensure that the places are following, local rules and government procedures and things, I guess?
It's been a while since I've used Hip Camp itself, and I've visited Harvest Hosts. I've never booked one. And my impression overall is that they're not as businesses focused on that, I think they've positioned themselves as like, hey, we're a booking platform, and if someone wants to put a listing up, they can go for it. And it is one thing that I love about the spirit of the industry. I do think that there's something fun about how grassroots some of these come about. I started my business the wrong way, but I got to start it and I got to get a taste of it that way. And I got to realize that there's something here, and something worth maturing into. But yeah, I don't think they do a lot to protect their clients from those mistakes. But as long as those clients aren't pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into it, I don't think it's as long as they're making money back on the tent.
Big question for our audience, I'm sure, is how long does your process take start to finish, and what do you cost typically?
So it varies widely, which I know is not what everyone wants to hear. But like I said, there's a pretty low bar for entry, but there's a pretty wide spectrum of people that come in. So, I've had certain clients that have no background in hospitality, and it might take weekly meetings for a couple months for them to understand what they're even talking about, because they have a complete misconception of what this industry is. Another client I just took on is going to be doing Serenity glamping. And Justin has thought through like a million things. He opened up this spreadsheet that blew my mind, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, all right. So I think with Justin, it's going to be, we've had 2 consultations. There's probably going to be a couple more, but he's in a great position to go kill it. And then there's other people, like I said, that I've talked out of doing it, and all I can say is that I wish that when I built the business with a lack of strategy in Texas, I could have saved myself a whole lot of money by just talking to somebody who knows this industry better, somebody who's been in it. If it's not me, find somebody, and don't think that you can reinvent the wheel having never thought about it before.
Has the economy and interest rates slowed things down for you? Is the industry as a whole slowed down since you started?
So I've been operating at a pretty small scale, and it has been going up. I don't think that my business's experience is a good indicator for the larger industry, just because I'm constantly repositioning myself and figuring out how it all really fits together. Because aside from just the decks and designs, I also have an ROI algorithm that we can use to sort of play with different business models. So I'm always kind of expanding what I do and niching down into who it can help. But my impression of the industry growth is that it is continuing to grow and expand. I think it's the rate of expansion has decreased since COVID. I think during COVID it was skyrocketing, and it's still going up, just not at quite that rate. That's my overall impression.
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation with some people at the glamping show about consolidation in the glamping industry. The glamping industry hitting like a peak and like coming back down. Do you see a lot of like potential consolidation happening in the industry in the next couple of years, where these bigger groups maybe start buying parks, or more chains are kind of formed, I guess?
I think definitely. I think that you will see that, but I think that there's a particular side of things that they'll never really be able to tap into quite as well as some of these smaller campground owners and campground owners. There's a personal touch that Marriott's coming. I think they're all the big ones are coming, but I don't think that they'll be able to replicate really the intimacy that drives this industry. And I think that the landowners who know their land and know what to highlight and are good at sharing it and are passionate about it, I don't think that's going anywhere.
So here's one of the questions I've had for a while with glamping, and maybe you can help me answer it. Is glamping the destination or the hospitality, or do you have to have both? Like, can I set up a tent in a cornfield, and if I have good hospitality, people will want to come? Or do I also have to have that really nice destination that like people want to go see? Like maybe a cornfield's not enough.
I think it entirely depends on your market. I think the truth is, as somebody who often lives in cities and sometimes has trouble getting out, I'll take a patch of dirt. I'll bring a sleep. I'll sleep in my trunk if it means I get to see stars. I think you could have nothing significant as long as you've got nature. You could also have a full food and beverage program, a masseuse that comes to your unit. You could go whole 9 yards and develop something that the Kardashians want to stay at. It all depends on who you're marketing to. I like to say that I think glamping is the threshold between nature and comfort. I think long as I get to smell some fresh air, see some stars, maybe howl at the moon without bothering the Joneses 10 feet away. I think that as long as you get to do that and know that you've got a safe bed waiting for you, you've got a place to go to the bathroom, and you have some general food solution, even if it's getting in your car and driving down the road. I think I used to say basic needs become crises when they're not met. And so if you don't have a place to sleep, if you don't have a place to go to the bathroom, and you don't have a food solution, then you're stuck in the middle of the wilderness, and that's a crisis. If you do have those things, then you're okay. And I think on a psychological level, it doesn't take a whole lot to make a guest to know that they're at least not in crisis. They might not get a massage. They might not get a massage, but as long as they've got a safe place to go to the bathroom.
That's good to hear, because I'm in Nebraska and all I have is corn.
Yeah. Well, hey, there's corn mazes are great. Corn makes for a great privacy wall between units. And as long as you've got, I always thought it was funny seeing people advertise a view of the stars. Because when you advertise a view of the stars, you're like advertising that you haven't built a roof.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think enough parks do enough with the stars aspect. That's something we've really been working on at Woodall's. The magazine is writing more features on people taking advantage. I know we just did something on dark skies. I mean, I think that's something that campgrounds, RV parks, glamping parks should really be taking advantage of, is that sky aspect, the stars. It's amazing, like when we went to Utah a few years ago, it's amazing how much different the sky is. In Utah, even than where I live, even though I don't live in a big city, you still don't get that same view. So, but the full name of your business is Sherlock Glamp Coach, and people can find you at SherlockGlampCoach.com, right?
Actually, we rebranded. Sherlock was my dog's name. I was Sherlock Tiny Homes. And then became Sherlock Glamp Coach and realized that Sherlock wasn't really punning anymore. So now it's just Glamp Coach. GlampCoach.com. Although SherlockGlampCoach.com leads you to GlampCoach.com. So
so you got two websites technically.
Yeah.
So GlampCoach.com will take you to Charlie here, who can help people with their glamping businesses. So, but I think we're running out of time. And Charlie, it was great getting to see you. Like Mike said, we must have walked by each other a bunch of times at the glamping show. So next year I'll be able to put hopefully a face with you when I'm back at the show. So maybe I'll say hi.
Yeah, just look for the two guys that everybody's trying to avoid, Charlie.
Yeah. So when I walk around, you can see people running away.
Yeah, it's like
it's
me.
So yeah. So, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks everyone for watching, and we will be back again next week.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks so much, Mike.
Guys.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground Magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com. Show hosts are Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. Executive producers Rick Kessler and Alex Burkett. Copyright 2022, G&G Media Group.